Who would you be without your friends and family? All right, so I don't expect you to have the answer to that question. None of us fully have the answer to that question, but I really wanted to make this video specifically about the importance of moving out, whether you're someone that's kind of in college or just graduated college and it's something that you're kind of on the fence about, right? I know a lot of people live with their parents for a little bit to save money, and that's great, but eventually you reach a point where you're like, should I move out? Should I just stay here? Things like that, or even the question of like, should I stay in the same town, or should I like move completely across the country, or things like that. This was a video that I really wanted to make for a while because it's pretty personal to me. I'm someone that's kind of moved away to college, and then after that moved to Seattle for my job. So I've gotten a lot of experiences just like away from home. I feel like I haven't been consistently at home for a while, since pretty much high school, which for me was like 6 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a long time. Just want to tell a little bit of my story and why I think it's critical for a lot of people to eventually move out. You know, even if you're living with your parents for a little bit to save some money, or if you're staying in familiar territory, it's important to kind of branch out. And I'll kind of describe why in just a second. To just give a very, very brief overview of my background, not comprehensive at all, but just from the top of my head. Moved away to college in 2016. So I went to Purdue. It was a whole state over. It was just a state over. It wasn't a big deal. It's not a big deal now. Back then it seemed like so far. But I'm from the Chicagoland area, and then I moved to West Lafayette, Indiana. And then afterwards, I went back to live with my parents for just a few months, but eventually decided to move out for job relocation over in Seattle, so all the way across the country. And you know, with a lot of this moving, you know, both for initially in college and then initially in Seattle, there was a little bit of an adjustment period. For me, that takes a little bit longer than I know quite a few people. I tend to kind of I get homesick quite a bit. That's something that affected me for almost a year in college, and then just a few months when I moved to Seattle. But that is something that I do struggle with. It's not easy, I will tell you that, but the benefits of moving have very much outweighed all that. And the reason I got to thinking about this is because every time I go home, there's always this like sameness that I feel. And it's very hard to kind of explain that. A lot of folks that have moved out and are watching this video and have been away from home for a while and occasionally go back might honestly be able to resonate with this, but a lot of things often stay the same with people, you know, parents, friends, family. You move out, you get a new worldview, you get a sense of kind of what's different, and it changes you. You change and grow as a person. And you know, for the past couple years, it's taken me a while to realize this because I never really think about it until people bring it up. But I've changed quite a bit since high school, and I just never realized that until people start bringing it up. Every time I go home, it's like, hey man, you know, you're pretty different. Like you're not the same Mohit from high school, and in some ways that's great. In some ways, that is a little odd, right? Because I still think of myself that way. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of change since I moved out, and I do recognize that now. And that's why I really wanted to make this, because I'm sure a lot of people who have either moved or are thinking about moving are either currently dealing or in the future will have to deal with this. It's worth knowing about. I didn't know about, and I have to admit I'm kind of in that phase where I'm trying to navigate this right now. It's like, why am I so different? Why have I changed a lot? Is that good or bad? What changes are good? What changes are bad, right? And then how do you navigate those friendships where you've changed a lot, and a lot of those people have often stayed in place or stayed the same because they decided to stay home, right? So it is difficult to kind of navigate that, and that the friend part will be a whole separate video. That's something I'm really interested in making. I really want to talk about the positives here of kind of how moving out has really just helped me tremendously. And I want to make sure that other people hopefully get some value here. If you're kind of on the fence about moving out, if you want some reasons as to why it can be super beneficial to you, though you may get homesick as well, just like I do, there's a lot of changes there that can come as a result of it that I think will benefit you in the long run. So here are 5 big reasons why I think it's important to move away, and I'll kind of share a little bit of my story in the process. First off, just really finding out who you are outside of friends, family, and what's comfortable. So that opening line I kind of started the video with. A lot of people, especially if you stay in familiar territory or don't necessarily move out right away, you'll often find yourself not really figuring out who you are without your friends and family. I struggle with this a lot at the beginning of college. It was just like I was in a whole different area, new people, knew everything, had to make new friends, all this stuff. But I felt like my identity was really just like based on all the people that I hung out with and that I was friends with and around in high school, right? So really just like getting out of that and trying to figure out who is Mohit at the end of the day. What does Mohit like doing, preferences, just like opinions, dreams, tolerance levels, things like that. A lot of people don't really think about that. And to this day, I still know quite a few people that I knew in high school, and I've like talked to them again here in present day, who have not moved or who have not kind of went anywhere, right? And have kind of stayed in the same place, that are exactly the same as they were back then, because they never really had reason to really navigate that, right? To navigate what their opinions are, kind of what their preferences are, their dreams, their tolerance levels, because those opinions and that worldview was never challenged. If you stay in the same place, nothing's going to change with that. And that's just kind of part of being in the same place, is everything, including yourself, is going to stay the same. So you'll never really get to challenge any of your conceptions or any of your worldviews. To really just like simplify that, you get too comfortable and then you give up on anything that you potentially could have done or have wanted to do, because you've stayed in the same place. And that's not a bad thing by any means, right? Everybody's different, but we all know, we all sometimes have that itch in the back of our head, or those dreams, right, that you really just want to execute on. But if you don't move away, if you don't kind of force yourself to be uncomfortable, you'll never really figure out a way to realize that. It's just going to be a dream, and eventually you're just going to give up on it because you become comfortable, because you've let yourself kind of just fall back on that. So this really forces you to figure out who you are when you're alone. You allow yourself to be alone when you move away, especially for those initial few weeks or months that it takes to meet new people and make new friends and stuff like that. And then this also in turn will help to inform your future friends, so you'll figure out what type of people you want to be around. And that can challenge quite a few things about your existing friends. So for those that have already kind of went through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those that don't, I'll make a whole separate video on that, just on the idea of friendships and just how they can change over time, especially as you grow. And I think that's like something I'm very excited to talk about, but I just want to break that down in a separate video because that's a whole topic on its own. So that's the biggest, like really big point. As you can tell, I spent the most time on that, but moving away will also allow you, outside of just figuring yourself out and, becoming uncomfortable, forcing yourself to become uncomfortable, and therefore challenging your own beliefs, is just expanding your worldview, right? There's a reason I always like to say, and everybody's going to hate me for this line, but there's a reason why most university students end up being more liberal than quite a few people. Now, I'm not going to share my beliefs or anything in this video for the sake of, not that I don't want to share them, but for the sake of I don't want to waste time kind of getting into that, because that's a whole rabbit hole that I can go on. But it is true. You go to a university, most people do tend to become more democratic or liberal, and the reason is really because you have so much interaction with different cultures and different ideas and things that you just never really realized were out there, right? Like if I stayed in my hometown, like outside of Chicago, I never would have had too much exposure to all the different types of people I met when I went away to Purdue, or even this past year when I moved to Seattle at the time of recording this. There's just so many different types of people, ideas, thought processes, and just things out there that you didn't know existed. And that's one of the best parts of, first off, moving away to college, particularly out of state, but also just being in a new area, right? It kind of forces you to kind of rethink your own beliefs and just expand your worldview, which at the end of the day is super, super important. And at first you might be like, Mohit, I don't really want to challenge those worldviews or things like that, or you think you know everything, right? But you really don't. No one ever really knows everything until you move to a new place, you're in a new area, new environment, and you get to experience these things, these people, ideas, things like that, and build new relationships and friendships. And that'll really help to inform kind of new beliefs that you're going to take with you into the future, kind of just like why things are the way they are, right? Why certain ideas are the way they are, why certain people believe what they believe. And I think just expanding your worldviews is really interesting, even if you don't necessarily agree with like a certain idea or belief or type of like culture or anything like that. You're able to understand it because you know those people, and at the end of the day, that's what's like super important. I can't tell you enough how many people I know that haven't really expanded their worldviews. And the biggest reason is just because they haven't moved away. Like they haven't like left what they already believe or kind of their preconceived notions, and then they get trapped in that. And that's not the place you want to be, because you end up becoming bitter and you think you know everything, and that's a trap that I'm very fortunate that I avoided. But I see it in a lot of people, and that's why I think that was my number 2 thing that I really wanted to talk about. So the other 3 reasons for moving out, the final 3, are really just a lot more of kind of material, really just developmental things that you're going to get outside of like just the ideological, like expanding your worldview. You're going to have to learn how to budget, manage your finances, and importance of working. Made a great budgeting video, I think is great. I use that budget every single week, so I'm gonna link that on the screen and in the description. Please check that out if you don't already have a basis, or if you just want to see something new, right? But really the importance of working, right? It teaches you the value of time, because when you live by yourself, you have to support yourself. And this leads into point number 4, which is also just learning how to cook. Everyone should know how. So cooking, budgeting, like both of these things are kind of intertwined. Everybody should know how to do these things. And often if you stay in the same place, particularly if you still live with your parents, you're probably in most cases not doing these things. If you are, that's awesome, that's perfect. But when you're on your own, you have to figure things out. Obviously you need to eat, and a lot of people could often just eat out all the time or buy a ton of frozen food, but eventually you get tired of that. Unless you're like filthy rich, right? You realize that that's not sustainable in the long term. So that in turn forces you to just manage your finances a little bit better, understand how much you can afford, and if they get complex enough, eventually create a budget. So those are 2 really great things that just kind of come out of moving. It's the whole idea of independence. Like eventually you want to get there. Every single person needs to be independent in some shape or form. As a human being and contributing member of society, I think it's really important. And even if you do have such a great financial background, it's still important to know how can you, if say we were to drop you in another country tomorrow with like a backpack, right? Can you survive, right? And that's the challenge I always like to present to people, is like, can you survive in that environment? That's why I think it's super important to start establishing that independence, and there's no better way to start doing that automatically than just by moving out or going to a whole new place. Final reason why I think it's super important, and this is just like super brief because I can go on a whole tangent here, is it just opens you up to new opportunities. So at the end of the day, like moving to, obviously going away for college has given me just quite a few different opportunities that I felt I never would have gotten if say I decided to stay home and even just commute, right? Or do school online. First off, you meet so many new people, right? It's the whole idea of just coming back to just challenging your own ideas. Second off, you get to join a ton of extracurriculars just because you're on campus. You know, you're already there. You live there, right? You're not forced to essentially go back at the end of the day. You don't have to worry about being home at a certain time. If you find out about, say, like a career fair or like an interview or something, anything at the last second, you're already present because you're already there. So that leads to obviously like new job opportunities, right? If you're flexible about the place, you can potentially get your dream job that may be halfway across the country, but they may not have an office, for example, in your existing hometown. Or near your existing hometown. So that's going to be tough. You're going to have to sacrifice, say, that dream job or the higher paying job or even the lower paying job that just might be a better job for you. Like you legitimately like working there better, but it's halfway across the country, or it's another state or another city or anything like that. So just having that flexibility of wanting to move, particularly early in life, it's harder to do later, will just open up a ton of new opportunities, mainly just for like career and networking stuff. Like being in a new place naturally introduces you to new companies, new opportunities, a new network of people, and that's going to lead to a lot later down the line. Versus if you stay at home, you are kind of limited by the opportunities that are around you, and those are still opportunities in themselves, right? But you'd also be missing out on other things that are out there in the world that you just didn't know about. Okay, awesome. So that was basically, in a nutshell, the 5 big reasons why I recommend moving away or getting out of your existing territory or town. I want to say territory, but kind of the 5 big things that I've noticed in myself that have changed quite a bit, or things that have benefited me because I decided to, 1, move away to college, and then also move away briefly. post-college for job relocation. So I am actually moving back to my hometown just because a lot of the people and things that I know are there, right? And you know, at the end of the day, I do kind of miss it and get homesick a little bit. So that's why at the end of this, I really wanted to stress that just like remember that no matter what, you shouldn't move just because someone tells you to, or that I told you to, or anyone else told you to. Like, say your parents, for example, if they really want to kick you out, or you know, you have a job that really wants you to move to that location, they don't want you to work like remotely or something like that. Just do it if you feel like it makes sense for where you are, right? If you're comfortable with it, at some level you're always going to be uncomfortable with moving, but you should have a little bit of a comfort in your decision before you decide to do that, right? Like, especially like if you're going away to college or post-college, if you're moving for work or anything like that, or you just genuinely want to be in a new area. If you feel like you're trapped or there's no growth happening or anything like that, and you just want to kind of expand your mindset and just really grow as a person, then moving will change you in ways that you never thought were possible. That's just how it works. Remember, there's always time to come home later. Much like myself, I'm moving back. At this point in my life, I feel like I've been away for quite a while. I've had sporadic visits here and there for the past 6 years, but I'm planning to move back permanently at this point in time. Oh, that place is always going to exist later, but you're never going to have a better time to move away and get new experiences than when you're young and have less responsibility, right? And have less people, right, really relying on you. So anyways, y'all, that's the video. Leave some comments and let me know what you guys genuinely think. You know, let's really smash that like button and get this video trending higher than my monthly rent in Seattle, because that thing's going up like crazy. That's also half the reason I'm moving. Please subscribe if even a fraction of my videos really resonate with you, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Peace out.